Israeli, pouring his heart out on the Telegram app, which is, if you haven't checked that out, it's a fun one. So that one, we'll highlight that one, and then highlight number 4, the Watchmen podcast on YouTube. If you like watching videos, or this, I often stream in my car to and from TPR. This is an American guy, but he gives like real-time updates on the Middle East. That's like really good for like the broad strokes, what in the world is going on. And so, yeah, so just wanted to give you guys that to check out. Not right now, because you're supposed to listen to me, but maybe later, after you go home, check those out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then we'll officially begin our teaching. So, Father, we love you. We thank you for your word. We thank you, God, that though the nations are raging, God, that you are on your throne. Jesus, that you are sovereign, that these are your end times, and that we know the end of the story. God, I just pray that you would meet us tonight as we look at current events. God, that you would let wisdom and understanding come. Your word said that knowledge puffs up, so not just that we would know what's going on, but that we would be better equipped to pray and love and serve and know your hearts. God, so I pray that you would just meet us tonight. I ask you to just let us enjoy this time talking about your word. In Jesus' name, amen. So this is Signs of the Times, War in Israel. And don't be surprised, I got some pictures that'll pop up on the screen. So if this image pops up, it's not an ad, it's a picture of something I'm going to reference. So tonight I want to talk about the October 7th attack that happened in Israel, and really minor on that. That's where we'll start. But then really the premise of tonight was that crazy thing, you guys have all probably heard about that at some degree or another. That really was like a floodgate that opened up so many really, really mostly negative things in the nations of the earth. And as people who are like, we're pro-Jesus, God really likes Israel, I just thought it's important to like know a little bit about what's going on. And again, especially in the wake of that attack, how the nations have quite literally been losing their minds. And so we want to look at that, and as always here, we want to bring in a bunch of Bible verses. And so tonight will be maybe a little more than normal, kind of this blend. I hope it's enjoyable, this blend of current events mixed with Bible verses to kind of put in context some real time, like this verse is happening, or this verse, wow, I don't know how that verse was possible, and now I can kind of see some tracks to that verse being fulfilled. And so that's kind of the aim tonight for that. And so, point A here, catching us up to speed. If you're kind of new with tracking with the Middle East and current events, I started kind of really following probably about 2 years ago. If you're new to that, it's like jumping into a raging river. I remember when I was like trying to like read some articles, and someone's like said something, probably Robbie like mentioned something cool is happening, and I tried to like read an article on Times of Israel. I just didn't. They used all these words, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And so sometimes it's hard to like jump in and start tracking with these things. And so hopefully one of the goals tonight is to give you guys a broad enough kind of survey of, obviously I can't cover everything, but a survey of the last year since October 7th, and kind of give you a little bit of like a more holistic understanding of what's all been going on. And so that's a part of an aim, hopefully, that whenever you do see articles and things in the future, you can kind of at least have a little bit of frame of reference of some of the names and some of the players involved and stuff like that. Okay, so point B, know and watch and pray. So as we'll get in here later in the session, I'm presenting that October 7th and then this last year, it's unprecedented territory, not just for Israel, but really for where we are on the timeline of Jesus' return. And so as ones, again, that love God, that love Israel, part of my goal, takeaway tonight is, again, not just that we know facts so we can impress, our coworkers or whatever, or family gatherings and Thanksgiving. We can that crazy uncle that always talks politics, and now I have something to combat him with. That's fun, but mostly I want us to be able to understand so that we can like really know and watch and pray. Again, God really likes Israel, and Israel I'm presenting is like in one of her darkest days since the Holocaust. And so I'm like, I want to know God's heart. I want to be his friend. I want to have lots of conversation. Lord, what are you feeling? What are you doing with Israel, with the nations of the earth? I want to know a little bit about what's going on in the landscape in our world just so I can pray better. So I found it easier to, when we know stuff about topics, we're able to pray more specific, targeted prayers and pray with more understanding, conviction, confidence. And then finally, just as messengers, like I think it's helpful to know all that's going on. So if we have conversations with, again, people at holidays or people that we run into, we can have conversations with them about current events and even ministry opportunities when they come. We can a little bit better understand what's going on in the earth and apply that as messengers. Okay, so let's dive into some of the content here. The hearts of men, this is Roman numeral 2, the hearts of men and unprecedented times. So when I think of October 7th as signs of the times, a sign of the time, I think of it for two main reasons. The first one is the rage of the nations. So specifically, and we have a whole Roman numeral later, I just want to introduce the idea, specifically anti-Semitism, the hatred of the Jewish people. That's not a new thing. It's been all throughout history, but both the magnitude, the number of attacks and just rhetoric, and then just this new, as we look at this new like form of trendy, kind of culturally acceptable anti-Semitism, which has been on full display, I think, in the news cycle now more than ever before. And so for that matter, I think it's one of the signs of the times of October 7th. And then number two is that this event has really, from my limited understanding, my perspective, October 7th and then the last year has really brought some dramatic shifts in the Middle East. You guys know this, but Bible prophecy is centered not around America, it's centered around Israel. And so we always want to zoom in on, as the most important area, like what's happening in Israel as the ultimate, like where we are in the return of Jesus and the signs of the times. And so things are shaking. Crazy stuff is happening every day. There's new developments. It is like a thriller movie right now for sure, playing out in real time. So I want to look at some of those things. So the first one, point A, the first target of the enemy. So before we jump into some of the current events, I want to give hopefully a little bit of a biblical undergirding for this conversation, so you can say, hey, Luke said a bunch of current events, but I want to give you some Bible verses to kind of frame this conversation, give some backdrop. So the first target of the enemy, the enemy's plan is centered around the people of Israel. It's centered around hatred of the Jewish people. You guys can flip over to page 2. There's some verses on the top. This is not a new idea, but maybe just a refresher. Satan, he's a deceiver, but he's actually pretty smart. And his plan, he's not dumb. He knows that this verse is true right here, Matthew 23, 39. Jesus says, for I tell you, you will not, he's talking to the leaders of Israel in this passage. He says, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. The enemy knows that Jesus can't come back and kick his butt and put him in prison forever if there's not a Jewish people that receive him. And so in one sense, it's horrible. In another sense, it's, again, cunning of the enemy, like to target Israel. So that's part of his strategy. And not only is it part of his strategy, but Revelation 12, it says that he, later on in the passage, he gets to the whole persecution of the saints, the things that we commonly read, and we're like, oh, snap, that's me. It does extend to us, but let's read the passage. It actually starts with somebody else. So it says, when the dragon, that's a name for Satan, it says, when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the child. From the context, it's clear that the woman is Israel. It says, but the woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly from the serpent. And then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her offspring. So it's picture is here. He tried to get Israel. God protected Israel. And the enemy's like, well, dang, that's my plan. And so his plan B is persecution of all the rest of everybody that's not Jewish people. But his first attempt, his first attack, his first focus is on the Jewish people. And then finally, Joel chapter 3 tells us that not only will the enemy target Israel, but the nations of the earth, the wicked nations of the earth, are going to zoom in increasingly more and more and more to where their focus and their priority is actually, as Joel says, where they come and actually physically gather against Israel, against Jerusalem. So it says, "For behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my heritage Israel." So God's going to gather all the nations of the earth. So all this to say is anti-Semitism is going to be at an all-time high when, like in the days that Jesus is just about to come back. As this passage says, from Satan, from the rage of the nations. And so it's not directly like a sign of the times, like in kind of the earthquakes, pestilence, kind of that thought process. But if we think of it as the fullness of wickedness is anti-Semitism being at the greatest. So in order for like Jesus to come back, we're going to be seeing an increase headed towards that. It's not going to get, now until Jesus comes back, anti-Semitism is not going to get less. It's not going to just go away. There's not going to be any world leader that comes in and makes things better. It's going to be, it's a snowball. That thing is going snowballing down the hill, as we'll look at later. And so, so the sign of the times, again, October 7th, we're seeing this whole swirl of anti-Semitism roar its ugly head, and nations of the earth are clapping and cheering this on. And so it's really is a sign of the times, and a horrible one. Okay, next one, I'll just hit this quick. But the abomination of desolation, it's one of those terms that the first time you hear it, it's like, what did he just say? This is when the Antichrist sets up a temple, image in the temple. And this is one of the most clear, most prominent signs of the times that Jesus said. And it's just, again, it's in the temple that's going to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. And in order for that crazy thing to happen, there's all sorts of these like impossible things that need to happen first. Before there's Antichrist, before there's an image that he can set up in the temple, there needs to be a temple. Before the temple's built, something's got to happen, because in the current climate, that temple is the most heated piece of territory on the entire planet Earth. and so the Jews are not allowed to build the temple, and they won't be unless some things shift. And spoiler alert, like they're shifting. Things are opening up to where that's not as far-fetched of an idea anymore. And so it's uncharted territory. Just real quick, letter C, some radical shifts need to happen. So these are kind of the three, and you can actually flip over to top of page 3, some verses on the top. These are some 3 of what I call like impossible things that are becoming more possible. So they are, the impossible things are, there's going to be some sort of peace treaty in the Middle East with Israel and the surrounding nations, and that's going to bring Israel to this place, Ezekiel 38, where it says, this is the Antichrist of ultimately going to make war, but the phrase in there is what I want to draw. It says, he will go up against a land of unwalled villages. He will fall upon quiet people who dwell securely. And so there's this coming reality of this, some sort of peace that the people of Israel, who are right now absolutely not thinking dwelling in peace and safety, there's going to be a coming time when they're in this heart posture of peace and quiet. Again, like seemingly impossible, but it's becoming more possible, as we'll look at. And then finally, there's going to be a temple present. And so all these 3 things, a peace treaty, Israel at rest, and temple present, again, even like a couple years ago would be like impossible. Like, I know it's going to happen, but it's like, I have no clue how that's going to happen. And we see one of the side effects, or the aftermaths of this this war in Israel, is all 3 of these things are becoming more and more likely and possible. Even so, I already had written these notes. I already wrote it down. And like 2 days ago, I saw soon-to-be President Trump elected his Secretary of Defense, and this dude was giving a public speech, basically saying, he was comparing Trump's previous term, how he moved the capital essentially America recognizes Jerusalem as the capital now and not Tel Aviv. And this politician was saying, that was a miracle and it was amazing. And then he just threw this in there. I was listening. I'm like, what? He threw this in there. He's like, and so like another miracle could happen if we did that. Like, why can't we build a temple in Jerusalem? And I was like, what? I already prepared this. I'm like, the politician, this dude in the Trump government who's about to take office for 4 years is saying this, like, for me, it's totally random. Like, how did he make that connection? Is he reading his Bible? Probably not. But it's like this politician is saying, like, we did the miracle of moving the capital to Jerusalem. Why can't we make the temple thing happen? And so, like I said, this stuff is becoming more relevant, more possible, more like if an American politician is talking about it, it's like things are progressing in their unfolding. Okay, so super long intro, but I wanted to kind of give, again, some Bible verses before we dive in, and most of the rest of the time will be a lot of current events and things like that. Okay, so let's get into the world since October 7th. So the craziest thing is, as crazy as October 7th one is, and as horrible it is, really the aftermath is so much more like just completely bonkers as we'll look at. So just a real quick recap of October 7th. If you have heard that term where you're like, well, I don't really know what that is. It's basically when a whole bunch of terrorists, thousands of terrorists, streamed over the border into Israel, followed by hundreds of Palestinian civilians, I will add. And they did the most horrible, unthinkable things imagined to old people, young people, horrible stuff. 12,000 plus Israelis were killed, 251 more were taken hostage. Many of them are still in captivity. And people have compared this to Israel's 9/11. America's 9/11, we would say that's the most like horrific day in American history, at least recent history. And in 9/11, nearly 3,000 people died. And we are a large nation. And so those of you who like math, not me, but like basically the attack that happened in Israel, 1,200 people dying in a day in a terror attack in a nation that has no more than 10 million people. You break down the stats, the attack was 14 times larger, more devastating than 9/11. So it's horrible, and 9/11 was horrible. But if you put it in numbers, that would be similar to another attack in America and 42,000 people dying in a day. Like that's how big this attack was for the tiny nation of Israel, 14 times larger than 9/11. So they're saying this is the darkest day in Israel since the Holocaust. And so it's just helpful to keep that in context and carry that soberly. So since Hamas invaded Israel, that wasn't just a one-time thing. They have continued launching thousands and thousands of rockets and missiles, and like I said, there's still hostages in Gaza. Okay, we have arrived. Manny or Temi, who's ever back there, if you guys could put up slide number 1. I want to talk about the players and the fronts. So you probably have heard the name Hamas. Maybe you've heard the name Hezbollah. These guys are making the news, but there's really a larger enemy behind that, and that's the country of Iran. Yes. Robbie, fill in the blanks. So the analogy is basically there's this thing called the proxy strategy. So Iran is all the one instigating. They're the ones that are funding. They're the ones that are supplying training to all these other terrorist organizations to basically go and do their dirty work. So they're saying, hey, they're delegating. They're saying, hey, we want to do really bad things to Israel. Here's some money, go and do it. And so that's what a proxy is. They're doing the bidding of their master, Iran. And so Hamas, which you've heard, the ones that did the October 7th attack, they're one of these proxy arms of Iran. The analogy is that they compare it to Iran as the head of the octopus. So it's the gross head of the octopus, and then all these proxies are these tentacles that are doing the dirty work. So this picture here, look at, okay, where's Israel? Can you point to Israel? It's a little tiny thing in the middle. Quite literally is surrounded. All these arrows are are the different proxies. Remember, those are just terrorist groups of Iran. So Iran is the puppet master pulling the strings. All these other groups are the ones actually committing most of the attacks. So we got Hamas over there. I guess it doesn't really help if I point because my screen's different. But on the west side, you got Hamas. To the north, in Lebanon, you got Hezbollah. And then you got, these ones don't make the news a lot, but you got Shiite Muslim military groups in Syria and Iraq. And then Iran, the nation, actually itself is over there to the east, which they have done some stuff here recently, directly from their own soil. And then all the way down at the very bottom, right by the Yemen down there, you got the people, it should say the name, Houthis. Houthis is the terrorist group. So quite literally, Israel is surrounded. There's 7 fronts. There's also the West Bank, which is a Palestinian territory inside of Israel itself. There's also been a lot of stuff there that Iran's trying to rev up. So remember, 10/7 was one group, Hamas, attacking, and then since then, Iran has been stirring up all these proxies to try to wipe out Israel. So that map is just crazy. So they're quite literally fighting on seven different fronts. The Israel Defense Force. I'm going to use the acronym IDF a lot tonight. That just means the Israel military. Okay, so the players and fronts. That's that picture there. Okay, moving on. I will add, and you can just keep the slides up until the next one. I will add that Hezbollah up there in the north, on October 8th, the day after Hamas went in, they fired near daily rockets. So they've fired thousands and thousands, probably at this point more rockets than Hamas. And so they threw their lot in early and have persisted since then. It's just really interesting. I wrote there in Roman, or letter B at the bottom, the nation of Iran is biblical Persia. So it's just some interesting connections. You know, you got Persia, you got the story of Esther and Haman and how he tried, that spirit that was fueling Haman tried to wipe out Israel. And then you got Daniel, what is it there? Daniel 10. As Daniel was praying, the angel Michael came to him and he's like, man, I've been busy. 21 days I've been fighting this principality thing, this spirit of Persia, principality of Persia. And so it's just interesting that Iran, again, like that, however that works in the demonic realm, that spirit of the Prince of Persia, I think, is, again, fueling biblical Persia, which is modern-day Iran, to do all these attacks. So just interesting Bible connections there. Okay, well, so after the 10/7 attack, there was, this short-lived, gosh, it was like 3 days, honestly, where pretty much all the nations, all social media was saying, we stand against what Hamas did. It's horrible. That was probably like 3 days. And then day 4, pretty much everyone decided, and now we're done sympathizing with Israel and that horrific attack. Now we're everyone kind of moved on to, now we're pointing our finger at Israel. And so these pro-Hamas, pro-terrorists, these protests erupted all over the nations of the earth. So not protesting, hey, what Hamas did is bad, but saying, essentially saying, hey, Israel is about to respond and they're bad. And so these protests, again, they weren't against what the bad stuff that happened on October 7th. They were against Israel. And so the nations, so these mobs all over the earth, you can put up picture 2. These mobs, I wrote down just some examples. They deface public property. They were aggressive. They were violent. I saw like some streets and different things in Europe where there was like these swarms of quite literally like hundreds of thousands of people chanting, and these rallies were not pro-Palestinian. They were anti-Israel. And so there was not people saying, help the people of Palestine. They're saying destroy the people of Israel. And so just when you the term pro-Palestinian, there's not really a lot of that. It's mostly anti-Israel. And so all these mobs broke out in Europe, in America, like all over again, like the week after or within the first week of these horrific attacks, the nations were already grinding their teeth against Israel. So this picture right here, this is from the Amir Sephardi guy, which I have in the back there for you to check out. In the midst of these riots, This was in Europe, in Britain. Things are going crazy, and the government essentially said this. They said, all Jewish synagogues and Christian churches, like, you guys are on your own, but we're going to send, military support and help to make sure that the mosques are all okay during all these Muslims that are all these pro-Palestinian mobs and protests that are happening. Like, we're going to go and send our forces not to help the people of Israel in Europe or Christian churches. We're going to go help the mosques. And so it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. But again, early on, the world is upside down, as the last thing said, that Britain was trying to help these mobs that were forming against Israel. Okay, point D, Israel's horrific discoveries. So they kind of already knew Israel before they went in October. They went into Gaza. They kind of knew beforehand. They did know beforehand that the Palestinians did not like them. But when they got there, actually boots on the ground, going house to house, they discovered like unthinkable amount. Like, it was so much worse than they ever imagined. So you can put up picture 3. They found Hamas terror in civilian homes. They found rockets. They found missiles. They found they found iPads with the lock screen was Hitler. They found Arabic translated Mein Kampf, which was Hitler's kind of manifesto, his doctrine. They found that translated in Arabic. They found all these things. They found this elaborate tunnel system that is quite literally billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, years and years of work. They built this underground, like I'm talking about like miles of cement. They got electricity down there. They got water. They got kitchens. They got underground cities that are built with the entire purpose of housing terrorists so they can move around, pop up in someone's home, fire a rocket, do a terrorist act, go back down. It's like horrific things. And Israel is just finding these things. And there's this whole culture that is literally built billions of dollars and time and energy on the eradication of the Jewish people. They also found, Israel found pictures like this where there's this deep, and it's really, it's horrible and it's really sad that there's this indoctrination of an entire generation with Hamas is basically training from the youth, they're doing that with children. They're training them to be terrorists. They have this, you can put up the next picture. They have literally have these terrorist camps, summer camps, where the kids go to the camp and they put on guns and do the thing, and they are literally training the kids to do all the horrible things that they did on 10/7. You've seen the game Shoots and Ladders. Well, this is Missiles and Kill Israel Shoots and Ladders version. This is another one they found there, just all sorts of, again, training children. And so I'm not saying Palestinians are bad. I'm saying we don't fight a battle against flesh and blood. This is demonic. This is anti-Semitism. This is horrible. And all this, again, my whole premise of this talk is sign of the times. And this is really Satan's agenda against this generation, and we're seeing it now more than ever. Okay, letter E, Israel put on trial. Basically, there's so much evidence that Israel, well, first of all, the Hamas terrorists, when they came into Israel, they were wearing body cams, and so they were like recording everything, and so there's little evidence of like the terrorists was recording what they did. And then Israel, as they've been going house to house, they've been recording everything. So there's like mountains of evidence against Hamas, and mostly the nations of the earth are like, they're saying we don't really care about all that. We want to focus on Israel as being bad. Israel's committing genocide. And so kind of the epitome of this was, I did put the date, December 2023, South Africa released, or basically sued Israel. I don't know how you sue a nation, but they sued Israel in this international criminal court. They sued Israel for genocide. And so Israel had had genocide committed against them. And within a matter of months, Israel is on the world stage with South Africa and other nations, getting behind saying Israel, you're the one committing genocide. Again, with the backdrop of Israel has all the stats, all the videos, all the evidence, like this picture right here. They have everything, and still Israel, like the nations of the earth, it's this irrational hatred of the Jewish people that really just chooses to ignore facts and say we don't really care about facts. We want to take out Israel. Point F, all eyes are on Israel. I'll read this verse, Ezekiel 5, verse 5. And you can get picture number 5 up there when you can. Ezekiel 5:5. Thus says the Lord God, this is Jerusalem. I have set her at the center of the nations with countries all around her. And the premise here is like there are so many wars. You guys remember, you may have forgotten, but there's currently an active war between Russia and Ukraine. Remember that? When's the last time you saw an article about that? Like it's this giant war, but it's being buried. And there's dozens and dozens and dozens of wars happening right now all across the earth. But you go on any news media outlet today, CNN, Fox News, whatever spectrum, everybody is talking about Israel. Everybody is talking about this war. All the eyes of the nations are on the Middle East, what is going on, what is happening. And so this picture is Paris, the Eiffel Tower, showing the Israeli flag colors there. You can go to picture 6. We've also had Palestinian flags being hung all over the nations of the earth. We had the Big Ben in London, one of the famous buildings there, had this scrolling marquee, like digital font on the side of the building, like saying, ceasefire now, stop the genocide. All the nations of the earth. This is a soccer match, or football, as they call it, understandably, because you use your foot. It really makes a lot of sense. Football match in Europe, I forget which country, but that's a soccer match. And look at that giant, that thing is enormous. Free Palestine. So my point here is this is not like, this war in Israel is the talk of every home in the world. It's all over. And so not only are the peoples of the earth, and these are civilians that are doing this, but leaders of nations are throwing in their lot, and they're trying to tell Israel, which is a sovereign nation, they can do whatever they want to do. But the leaders of the earth are telling Israel, you need to stop, you need to do this. They're saying you need to play by the rules, and so you got leaders doing tweets and making statements and telling Israel what they need to do, and so all the peoples of the earth are raging against Israel. Increasingly, all the leaders and decision makers are raging against Israel. It's just crazy. Okay, picture 7. I'll do this one real quick, but it's just crazy. Again, this all started with Israel having genocide committed to them. And this short amount of time later, the UN, 124 votes, so the overwhelming majority, so that's 124 different nations, are saying, yes, we agree, Israel should be stripped of their right to defend themselves against genocide. Israel needs to stop everything. So that's 124 nations that are basically, I don't think every nation is anti-Semitic and horrible, but it's like a lot of them, the fuel is not good. Like a lot of them, there's this demonic rage against Israel. And so it's just like 124 nations are saying, Israel, you need to stop. You can't act on defending yourself. And it's just like, so all the nations are gathering against Israel. It's just crazy. Okay. And then just, I'll hit letter H real brief, but there's a lot of new, since October 7th, new things. Israel has just, they've launched more attacks and more intense and more daring hostage rescues, taking out leaders of terrorist organizations, like more crazy stuff than they have pretty much ever before. Like it's unprecedented what they're doing. And also in the midst of this war, for the first time ever, Israel has attacked in Iran, and the first time ever they've attacked that one of those proxies in Yemen, which was at the the beginning of, I showed you that map. But so Israel's doing uncharted territory here since the war. Okay, point I, the war's impact on Israel's society. And this is one really, it's just helpful to talk about this so we know how to pray. Israel's society, and this is from an American, I'm not Israeli, but from my perspective and what I've heard and studied, like their society is really, 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 really broken right now. Just a nation of 10 million, really small. Everybody knows someone or a friend of a friend that was killed, wounded in the October 7th attack. Everyone's got, their children or their neighbors that are fighting in the army right now. Like every person in Israel is like fully engaged and fully like just in this conversation. And everyone felt the massacre that happened on October 7th. It deeply wounded this nation. And there's been, rightfully so, these cries rising from all the parties, like never again, never again will Israel go through this. There's been these cries rising. And again, just so you can pray, part of this sad thing is there's been a significant increase in drug abuse, both prescription and illegal, but the stats are up to like 1 in 4 Israelis. So how many people are in this, like, I don't think you guys are using drugs, but like one in 4 is that 25% of the whole nation is addicted to drugs and controlled substances and things. And just, to me, that's just the evidence of they're trying to do something about the pain, and the father who has their kid on the front lines, like, how do you sleep? How do you sleep? And so the fabric of the nation is hurting. Over 60,000 people in the north have been evacuated from their homes. They're living in hotels. Like, how do you do work? How do you do your kids in school when you're out of your home for over a year, living in hotels? Really hard. Much of that territory that's been evacuated is like an economic hub, is farmland, and so just Israel's economy, tourism. Like, no one's going to Israel right now to go see the sites. Like, their economy is built. One of the main legs is tourism, and so no one's going. Their economy is like really, really hurting. Small businesses are closing. So all this is just like Israel as a nation. They just really need our prayers, both as a people, but then as just their economy and stuff. They're really, really, really in difficult times. Okay, so now I want to focus on the floodgates of anti-Semitism. So really, I told you before that this is not a new thing. Hatred of the Jewish people has been around from the beginning. But what's been increasing is the number, so the amount of incidents and the global nature. It's not just in the Middle East or this country. It's literally all over the nations of the earth. And then this horrible, like, trendy, socially acceptable version of it that's gaining traction. I think that's the most concerning, which we'll look at. So let's go to, you can put up picture 8. You get a chance. We'll start here at home with America. Anti-Semitism is skyrocketing. So another one for math people. If you don't like math, just look away. But see the yellow? That's 2022. So that was the highest year. This is, what's their name? The ADF. ADL, Anti-Defamation League. They track anti-Semitism across the U.S. and the world since 1979. 2022 was the greatest year that they've been tracking, and they had 3697. The red there is 3-month span since October 7th to January of this year. So in 3 months, essentially, like a year's worth, like almost breaking the record in 3 months of this. This is anti-Semitic attacks here in the U.S. And I don't have a graphic, but the number from October 2023 to September 24, so a year, over 10,000 cases in the U.S. And so the previous record was, I hate to say record because it sounds good, the greatest amount was 3,700 in the last year, over 10,000 and rising. And so it's like, again, this to me is like, I say opened up the floodgates of anti-Semitism because Israel was the one that had genocide committed to them. You think they would be like garnering sympathy of the nations and like we want to help. But it's like this attack actually it unlocked something. It unlocked something. Like why else would the tax, triple? It really is. Again, what Ephesians 6 says, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but there's demonic things at play here. Okay, close to reason. I think I kind of already hit that. I'll read a verse from page 7. James 3:17 says, but wisdom is, so it's talking about, here's what wisdom is. It says it's first pure and reasonable and gentle and open to reason. So wisdom, part of being wise is being open to reason. And what we've seen with this newest strand of anti-Semitism, I already kind of mentioned it, but people are increasingly not open to reason. They're not open to facts. So you're saying like, there's been so much where people are presenting, here's what Hamas did. And here's all these stats about how Israel is the IDF, they're the most humane. They go to significant measures to not harm civilians. Here's like 20,000 instances where they've done that. And the people, like nations of the earth, are saying like, I don't care. I have my agenda, and it's Israel bad, and nothing you could do. So like there's this closing off of hearts, this hard hearts where people like are not motivated by facts. And you bring to them videos, you bring to them things, and there's nothing you can do in love and kindness to change their heart because they're so closed off, and their hearts are calloused and seared. And so this is similar. I mean, this is the maturation of that, but we see this in Revelation 16. Just to kind of give you another picture, it says the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and it was allowed to scorch people with fire. They were scorched with the fierce heat. They cursed the name of God, so they knew who was doing that plague. They cursed his name and said they did not repent or give him glory. And so we see this searing of the hearts in the end where they're like, God's doing that, and I'm not repenting. I'm digging my heels in. I don't care what God does. And so we're seeing a similar thing happen now where the nations of the earth are like, I don't care, like, the cat's out of the bag, like anti-Semitism, like we're running with that full speed right now, and we're not slowing down. It's really horrible. Okay, trendy and acceptable. You probably have heard and it's a catchy phrase, honestly. The chants from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It's hashtag, it's videos, it's all over. This trend that kind of came to pass. And that's, in case you don't know, like that what they're meaning by the chants is actually like Palestine will be free from all Jews. We will live instead of them. That's what that's saying, from the Jordan River all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. Like that's Muslim territory, that's Palestinians. Jews can go, like we want to annihilate you. That's what that thing is saying, but it's in this, repetitive kind of catchy lingo and phrases. And so horribly, like a lot of especially young people, have been picking up on this on TikTok, seeing it, and like, oh, like that's, that cool influencer is saying that, like I'm going to get behind that. And so they've been reposting and sharing and taking a video of themselves saying, Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. And I saw this article or this video where this lady, we'll get here after this, but this lady went around to the college campus protests, and she was filming a video like asking all these protesters, like, do you know, like from the river to the sea, like what you're chanting, like do you know what that means? Like which river and which sea? Holds the microphone, and like 90% of them have no idea what they're saying. They're just there because it's trendy, it's cool, because it feels good. And so again, the nations are being swept up into this anti-Semitism a lot of times without even knowing it at the beginning, but then there's a hook that just gets in their hearts. Okay, number 9, picture number 9, you can put that up. We'll get there in a second. Probably I think this is the most disturbing. There's a lot of things that are disturbing. I'll talk about that picture in a second, but this is probably the most disturbing trend I've seen is it's been going around where people have been reading Hitler's Mein Kampf, his doctrine for how he wanted to kill all the Jews. They've been reading it, and then people have been recording, like they've like had a little picture of his book in the corner of their video, and then they've been sharing like, well, like, I kind of understand where he was coming from. Like, here's why, and I know he's like a bad guy, but I kind of agree with this. And so there's been this increasing trend where people have been showing like sympathy to Hitler and trying to relate to him and forgetting all of the horrific things he did. And so there's this, again, social media trend, TikTok. The younger generation are adopting this, read his Hitler's Mein Kampf, and then like posting sympathetically towards that. It's horrible. Okay, man. This one here is from college protests. We'll talk about that. But this is 1938 in Vienna, Austria. The top picture there is, I don't know how big it is. Oh, you can kind of see. But on college campuses, either protesters basically blocking Jews from entering into their campuses, into their classes. And then we see it again, 2024, at Columbia University and others. They did the same thing. So they're pulling out the people who are organizing these protests. They understand history. They know what happened at the beginning of World War II, and they're trying to get things back to that place again. And so just there's so many more parallels that are just really, really horrible, ones like this that are happening, that are pointing back to where things have been and where they want things to go again. And so on the college campuses, you guys might have seen videos. There was some stuff actually happened down in Austin and some campuses even in Dallas where there's, again, not pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel. They say they're there to support people of Palestine, but all of the rhetoric is openly calling, like openly genocidal slurs and calls, and they're not even like, many of these protests, they weren't hiding it. It was like, death to the Jew. Like, it was like you're watching the video like, this is in America? Like, this is crazy. And again, 10:7, I'm arguing again, it unleashed more of this demonic spirit, this demonic permissibility into the air. Okay, let's move on. Letter F. Again, this is one that I was writing my notes. I had them all done, and then this event happened, and I was like, that needs to make it in there. So this was in just a couple of weeks ago, November 7th in Amsterdam, Netherlands, another soccer match. And after the match, there was these violent, basically these Muslim mobs that had been formed and were waiting outside of the stadium for Jewish fans who had flown in to see the soccer match. I think there's like 3,000 or something. And these Muslim mobs were waiting for them to come out, and they did all sorts of horrible things, a lot of verbal stuff. I saw a video of like literally running them over with their cars and calling for this, and it was horrible. And another horrible thing was the police were pretty much doing this. They were not responding right away. There was even instances of different influencers, including one of this Dutch soccer star who was posting, while it was happening, was posting on social media, like cheering on these violent mobs that were targeting these Jews in Amsterdam. And he was posting, like, oh, good job, guys, keep it going. Soccer star, influencer, not hiding it. This was right after the Netherlands had just celebrated the anniversary of Kristallnacht, which was a horrible thing that happened in 1938. Many people point that back to actually when the Holocaust started, was this night when basically the people rampaged against Jews and businesses. And so there was no mistake that the nation had just commemorated that anniversary, and then these violent mobs did it again. There's reports of even Jews like hiding in attics and from their pursuers, again, pointing back to parallels of people like Anne Frank and others, Jews during World War II, like had to hide in out of way places to preserve their lives, and we were seeing it happen again. And so it's like we saw history with this one, like history is repeating itself in the most horrible senses. Okay, so heavy stuff. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Again, I just want you to feel like this is the signs of the times. The Bible, we focus rightfully a lot on earthquakes and pestilences and things because the Bible does a lot, but there is a lot to this anti-Semitism trend and the hatred of Jews that is really concerning, and really, like, for students of Bible prophecy, we want to carry it in our hearts, and also it is a sign of the times. Okay, well, I want to give a little bit of a lighthearted one. It's still heavy, but in a different way. So I want to look at just some reports of God doing God stuff over this last year. You guys know, like, God is never going to let Israel be wiped out. And we've seen in this current war, he's doing crazy things, that he's protecting the people of Israel in ways that he's thundering loudly, like, I am the God of Israel. I do what I want, and I get glory for my name. And so we've seen instances of that I want to share and just encourage us that in the midst of all that we've been reading and looking at, like, God is on his throne. He's acting for his people. History is not spiraling out of control. His hand is involved. Okay, let's just read this verse. Psalm 124. If it had not been for the Lord who is on our side, I think this verse is just so applicable to Israel today. It says, if it had not been for the Lord who was on our side when people rose up against us, they would have swallowed us up alive. Their anger kindled against us, and the floods would have swept us away. The torrents would have gone over us. Then over us would have gone raging waters. But blessed be the Lord who has not given us as their prey to their teeth. We have escaped like a bird from the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. So this passage is just saying, if things went how things are supposed to go in the natural, we'd all be dead. But God is for us, and he's helping us. And Israel has seen that. Point A, just the biggest one, is when Hamas, long story short, but Hamas, when they attacked on October 7th, as bad as 12,000 Israelis was, that attack was actually supposed to be a coordinated. Remember that map at the beginning? All the proxies surrounding Israel? That attack was supposed to be, and it was planned to be, all of them attacking at the same time. So 7 different fronts, all at the same time. And Hamas, we really don't know the reason why, but they jumped the gun. They wanted the glory, or they had reason, but they jumped the gun and basically left all the other 6 proxies like reeling and trying to figure out what they were going to do. And so even that was the mercy of the Lord, that as bad as October 7th was, it could have been significantly worse. Another one, top of page 9. The IDF, when they went into Lebanon in October or September, I can't remember, but here in the last few months, they literally found another tunnel. So this is now dealing with Hezbollah, a different terrorist group. They found another tunnel in the north that had all these jeeps prepared. They had all these rockets, they found literal plans. There was another October 7th attack that was Hezbollah had planned and was planning on doing, but Israel thwarted it. They got there in time to avert this attack. You can put up slide number 10 when you get a chance. I saw this one, it's super cool. So this is an IDF soldier. What he's holding is a pocket book of Psalms. And he had it in his pocket right here. And he got shot by a bullet. And look at that book of Psalms literally saved his life. And so we see the supernatural protection of the Lord even in the, and I am positive that there are so many stories that we don't know about of frontline troops experiencing bullets going a different way and tanks, RPGs coming at them and swerve. I'm sure there are so many stories that we don't know about like this, where God is preserving life and protecting his people. Okay, you can put up picture number 11. Just to quickly go through this one, the country of Iran attacked Israel for the first time from their own soil. They sent the largest ballistic missile attack in the history of modern warfare. And things like this happened, where this is a missile that was supposed to explode and like gunpowder in there, and it's supposed to cause all sorts of damage. It landed on a civilian's roof and got stuck, which is a bummer for your roof being destroyed, but that thing should have blown up and killed the people in the house, but it somehow didn't go through. And so just, again, stuff like that, that's you look at it, it's okay, God is speaking even through all of the turmoil and the turbulence. It's his hand is involved in helping Israel. Another example, back in August 2024, 4, there was a terrorist he had a bomb attached to him. He was in Tel Aviv, walking down the streets, and all of a sudden his bomb blew up prematurely. So the terrorist was the only casualty, which is amazing in itself. But what was crazy is this dude was on his way to a stadium event where there was thousands of Tel Aviv residents in the stadium. This dude was on his way, and his bomb just prematurely went off, and he was the only one killed. And so again, it's like, that's kind of an intense story, but it's like the Lord was protecting, the Lord was orchestrating that and preserving life. You might have seen this one. I don't really know what to do with this one. Point F, there was 2023, there was this Turkish lawmaker. I forget, I think it was in their own government chambers or whatever, but he gave this really passionate anti-Israel speech, and then quite literally put down the mic and instantly like fell over, heart attack. and later like died in the hospital. And it's like, is it just by chance it happened? Maybe. Is it the zeal of the Lord? If you touch the apple of my eye, not good for you. I think it's more towards that. And so I think we see in this case just an example of the justice of the Lord. Okay. Worship leader, you can come on up. We'll wind down here just a few more. Let's just go to page 11. Let's go to letter E, a longing for peace like never before. So I told you at the beginning that there was these impossible, quote-unquote, Bible prophecies, like peace in the Middle East, these things that the Bible says are going to happen that we scratch our head, we're like, I don't know how that could ever happen. Part of this war, what it's been doing is it's been exposing to Israel, to all the nations of the earth, and mostly to the moderate Muslim countries in the Middle East who want peace. They're seeing Iran destroy lives, destroy economies, they're seeing the ugliness of radical Islam. And so all these Muslim nations are basically, like, they're more and more like wanting peace, and more like, there's actually videos of all these Muslims after Israel took out Hezbollah's leader. There's all these videos of Muslims like cheering and basically calling the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, like calling him a champion, calling him a legend. And there's like these Muslim nations who don't really have the greatest feeling about Israel are now cheering because Israel is taking care of business. They're taking out this radical Islam. And so Israel is longing for peace. The moderate Muslim nations are longing for peace. And so we're starting to see like the idea of a treaty or of an agreement, or Israel being allowed to build a temple, like it's becoming more and more like that wouldn't be as shocking as it was maybe a year ago. Okay, so I'll just wrap up with this. I know this was a lot of material. I wanted to, again, mostly kind of just inform you guys and give you all of that. I realize it was heavy stuff, but like we always are called to stand with Israel, and now more than ever, like they need our prayers. They need us to be having conversations with God about, like, Lord, not just I stand with Israel, I post about that, or I tell people like what does that mean to stand with Israel? Like they need our prayers, they need our support now more than ever. And so I hope that this message was just encouraging and giving some information. So I'm just going to pray. Lord, we just recognize this is heavy stuff. God, we just pray that you would help us, Lord, to process, help us to carry, even if we don't know all the facts. Lord, we would just know that these are unprecedented times in Israel, and that that's your beloved people. And that's the people that, like, you're a Jew. You're going to come back and rule from Jerusalem. God, I pray that we would just have our eyes increasingly dialed into Jerusalem, our hearts connected, that we would have a burden of prayer, that we would genuinely stand with Israel now and through the days ahead. God, so we just pray that you would just, whatever image or point that I made tonight stuck out in people's hearts, that you would just let them continue to think about that and just keep the conversation going tonight. So we just love you. We thank you for this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys. This is going to become our prayer room now. So if you want to chat with your neighbor, you can go ahead and do that in the lobby. And thank you.